Chapter 9. First Bite. The night inside the palace had gone eerily still, as if even time held its breath. Aayansh Rajvanshi ascended the grand staircase, one arm cradling Aaravi's unconscious body, the other coiled in quiet resolve. Her breaths were shallow, barely noticeable, her form weightless in his arms, yet heavy with a silence that cut deeper than any scream. There was no urgency in his steps, no chaos, no confusion, only one man's irrevocable decision, etched in each moment like a decree carved in stone. He didn't take her to her chamber, no. He carried her into his room, the king's quarters, the most sacred wing of the palace, expensive, majestic, drenched in golden chandeliers and lingering scent of sandalwood. It wasn't just a room, it was the embodiment of dominance, of reign, where power did not need to announce itself, it simply breathed. The carved door creaked open, silk curtains danced in the breeze. The ancestral bed, carved from sacred wood, waited. The walls were lined with stories of war and loyalty. The floor echoed only authority. This was the heart of the empire, and tonight it beat for her. Ayan gently laid Aaravi down on the bed, as if setting a rose on a battlefield. Her forehead was damp, lips parted, and yet she looked every inch of the queen, of a legacy soaked in fire and blood. Even in that fragile state, her features didn't surrender. They held on, stoic, fierce, like a warrior resting after a long battle, not a victim of fate. He didn't move away. Instead, he sat beside her, close enough that her breath could anchor him, as if daring fate itself to touch her without first answering to him. Then came the soft sound of footsteps. Aishwarya rushed in, barefoot, breathless, her little hands trembling as she climbed onto the other side of the bed. She didn't say a word, just clutched Arvi's hand like it was the last thing between this world and the next. In her teary eyes was a reflection of Ayansh's own unspoken torment, raw, childlike concern veiled behind the regal silence of the Rajvanshis. Behind them, the massive doorway stood open once more. Rana appeared at the threshold, solemn, his voice low. Rajasa, the doctor has arrived. Ayan didn't turn. His gaze remained on Arvi's still form, as if fearing that blinking might make her vanish. His voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the command, and wrapped around it like steel. Send her in. The doctor entered swiftly, and then she paused, struck by the stillness in the room. It wasn't just a woman lying unconscious, it was a painting, a cruelly poetic one. A queen collapsed in silk sheets, a king at her side, carved out of stone and storm, a child clutching her mother's hand like it could heal kingdoms. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was a legacy holding its breath. The doctor knelt forward. Rajasa, I need to examine her. Everyone will have to step outside. The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it thundered. Ayansh's eyes darkened, his jaw tensed, lips tightening into a thin, ruthless line. I'll leave with the princess, he said, voice quiet but laced with warning. She stays. The doctor faltered, but before she could argue, Aishwarya had already straightened her spine. innocence in her face, resolve in her stance. She wasn't just staying, she belonged there. For a moment, time bowed to the stillness. Then Ayansh rose, slowly, deliberately. He looked at Aaaravi one last time, not like a man watching a woman sleep, but like a soldier offering silent prayers to his goddess before stepping onto the battlefield. Then he walked out. The heavy doors closed behind him with a whisper that sounded like a woe. Outside, worry hung in the air like incense in morning. Rana, Raval, servants, and Ekta smiling, but not kindly. Unlike the rest, Ekta wasn't praying, she was waiting. Well, forgive me for asking, Rajasa, she said, voice tipped in sarcasm. But did you perhaps pressure the Ranisa into this marriage? Could that emotional burden be the reason for her collapse? A thin blade disguised as curiosity. The question hung in the air like poison. Ayan didn't answer. He didn't flinch, but something in him shifted. His hands clenched into fists. The signs of his jaw pulsed. For a heartbeat, the whole palace seemed to be still again, as if preparing for the storm. But he didn't speak. He didn't owe answers to vultures. He stood there, unchanged, unshaken, his silence louder than war drums. Not as a man accused, but as a king awaiting word on his queen. The heavy mahogany door creaked open once again, and this time the doctor found himself staring into the eyes of the same silent figures who hadn't moved an inch, standing at the forefront, draped in an air of aristocratic power and unshakable authority, was Ayansh Rajvanshi. His presence wasn't merely seen, it was felt. Broad shoulders cloaked in a designer sherwani, hair slicked back with precision, and eyes that burned with a storm of concealed worry. There was concern hidden in his gaze, but his face wore the armor of royalty, stern, unreadable, and devastatingly calm. Is the queen stable now? His voice echoed through the corridor, low, commanding, yet laced with urgency that cracked through the regal chill he wore like second skin. The doctor bowed slightly in reverence, speaking with composed reassurance. She's fine, just a spell of weakness, likely from prolonged fasting and emotional exhaustion. Her meals must be carefully monitored with care. She'll recover soon. Ayansh gave a curt nod, then gestured subtly toward Rana, his silent second in command, with nothing more than a flick of his eyes. The signal was clear: escort the doctor out, settle the dues, and in short, spoke to no one. The order was understood without words. Rana bowed his head and moved like a ghost beside the doctor, vanishing there outside the gliding hallway. Inside the room, silence was heavy, but no longer lifeless. On the large four-poster bed, Aaravi lay awake, pale against the cream silk sheets. Her delicate hand was held tightly by Aishwarya, whose childlike innocence melted into a storm of worry. Aaravi's lips curled in a soft, tired smile, a faint flicker of life ignited only by the presence of that little girl. You're in trouble, Dee, Aishwarya scolded with puffed cheeks, her voice trembling with indignation. How could you starve yourself like that for 4 whole days? Who does that? Aaravi lifted her other hand slowly and brushed her fingers along the princess's cheek, whispering, Forgive your reckless sister, princess. Aishwarya looked away with a pouch, but the way her fingers clung tighter to Aaravi betrayed her resolve. Her love, unshaken, softened the room. Aaravi's smile deepened, exhausted but real. Then a movement behind broke the stillness. Ayan stepped in. She saw him. She tried to sit upright, but before she could rise, he was at her side, firm hands pressing gently on her shoulders. Don't. His voice was stern, laced with warning, but beneath it, a tremor. Only one RV could hear, one that said, "You scared me." She looked away. She couldn't meet those eyes, not now, not after what her uncle had done, not after being reminded again that her place in this house was never hers to claim. The wound was raw, bleeding behind her silence. He noticed. He always did. But this time, he said nothing. Instead, he turned toward a servant standing at the door and ordered coldly, "Bring her meals here, now. Fresh, warm, and clean. No oils. Everything green. And make sure it arrives before I lose my patience." The servant ran out as though chased by shadows, and with that, the weight of everything, unspoken, thickened. Ekta, who had lingered nearby, now made her quiet exit. Her absence left a vacuum in the room that was almost comforting. A breath finally released. Arvi turned to Aishwarya again, her voice now gentler. "Forgive me, princess, if I ever hurt you, even unknowingly." The little girl blinked, confused. "What are you saying, Didi Ma?" Arvi froze. "Dima?" Aishwarya beamed. "Yes, because you were my sister and now you're also my mother. So you're my Dima." Arvi couldn't breathe for a second. "You're not upset?" Aishwarya giggled, looking toward Aayansh. "Papa Sa told me everything. He didn't say a word without asking me first. I said yes. I was the one who told him to talk to you." Arvi stared at her in stunned silence, her eyes slowly drifting toward Ayansh. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes, they burned like secrets locked behind castle walls. "At first, I was shocked too," Aishwarya continued. "But then I understood. And then you stopped talking to me. I thought I lost you." Arvi pulled her into an embrace so tight it silenced everything else. She kissed her forehead and whispered, "Then what about that little drama you pulled during the homecoming?" Aishwarya laughed, devilishly proud. "That was all me. I roped Babasa in. But then he sent that message about Ekta auntie on the way back from court, and well, I just thought we could add some spice." RB gasped. "Wait, you were part of that, Mamasa?" Ayan shrugged, one shoulder lazily, the corner of his lips twitching. "The princess plans are hard to resist and entertaining." RV could hardly believe. Was this the same Ayansh? She stared at him, heart thudding, mind spinning. In just 4 days, the palace had changed shape. The walls had bent, masks had cracked, and then the food arrived. A silver tray laden with everything Arvi hadn't known she was craving. Porridge laced with saffron, warm broth, fresh fruit, fragrant rice, simplicity wrapped in royal elegance. Ayansh moved first. He rose, walked to her, and extended a hand. "Come, eat something. You're already too delicate. If you stay hungry any longer, you might float away with the wind." She shot him a glare, but took his hand away. Unthinking, unquestioned, he guided her gently to the velvet sofa beside the bed. The plates were laid before them. A hush fell. Just as she reached with his spoon, Ayan tore a morsel from his roti and offered it to her. She froze. What is this? Ayansh leaned in slightly, lower now, deeper, almost reverent. You're my Rani Sa now, and from this day, the first bite I take will always belong to you. Aishwarya clapped like a delighted child. Aaravi closed her eyes in disbelief. Rajasa, I swear to. Ayansh dipped his head, whispering against her ear. Mrs. Tripathi is watching. She flinched, but her lips parted anyway, and the first bite passed between them, his fingers brushing her lips too gently. Her mouth closed over his offering. Her breath hitched. Unknowingly, her lips grazed the edge of his fingertips, just a whisper of touch. But for Ayansh, it was a tremor. Something shifted, deep, silent, irrevocable, and yet he didn't pull away. He simply stared at his hand like it belonged to someone else, like the sensation of her lips, light, warm, electric, had branded him. And in that brief, stolen moment, he realized the lie he'd spoken was not to Arvi, it was to him. Ekta was not there. He just wanted an excuse to feed her, to feel her. And now, with her taste lingering on his fingers, his soul began to unravel. Arvi watched him, trying to read the storm behind his still eyes, but even she couldn't grasp what was beginning, because neither of them were ready for the fire they had just ignited. When the lie tastes sweeter than the truth, how long before it turns into a sin?
Married to My Uncle, A Contract Marriage. Listen to the full audiobook on YouTube or Pratilipi FM. Alfazo ka Safaranama.